Hey, what's up? My name is Manny. I am a 2D/3D digital artist. Today we are going over the design breakdown on my Super Saiyan effect that I posted on Instagram. Now, I've been asked numerous times to make a video of it, so now I decided to make this my first YouTube video. I am super excited to be here, so yeah, let's just get started. Okay, so the design process was pretty simple. I broke it down into 3 different parts. So the first part was actually gathering all the reference photos. So I know at a glance these reference photos look pretty random, but I assure you there was a process behind all of these photos. So the main objective of this project was to design another interpretation of the Super Saiyan effect that we all know from Dragon Ball Z. We wanted to create a unique design while keeping the original elements that looked like it was from the Dragon Ball Z universe. So I came up with these 3 defining characteristics that we took from the original series and brought it over to the new design. The new design must have these 3 characteristics. Okay, number 1. Everyone knows that Dragon Ball Z is notorious for having these really buffed up characters, and so we really wanted to keep that consistent with the new design. Okay, number 2. Even though I had the creative freedom to do whatever I wanted, I still wanted to keep that original color. I know there's like a bunch of different types of Super Saiyan modes, and they're all associated with their own colors, but I really wanted to keep that iconic yellow and orangey color. And I know that the final design will look pretty different from the show, so I really wanted to resemble that Dragon Ball Z feel. Okay, so the last one is very important. If I pop up all the Super Saiyan reference photos that you saw before, there's this one thing that they all have in common. If you notice the light from all these photos are actually come from the bottom and shooting up. Even though there's like this really large glowing energy surrounding his whole body, and his body is supposed to be illuminated from edge to edge, the main light is still shooting from the bottom up. And it really creates these nice harsh shadows onto his face and onto his body, and it really makes the whole image look way more dramatic and imposing. Now this detail may seem really minimal and small, but I really do feel like this is what makes the Super Saiyan pose look so iconic. It just makes the overall composition look way more epic than just a normal lit image. So I wanted to make sure that my new design has that exact same feel. Okay, so we're moving on to part 2 of the process. So I started to design the human model in Blender just because I couldn't really find a good photo to use, and I was only limited to stock photos only. And so I wanted to have more freedom in terms of like changing the pose, changing the lighting, and maybe the overall camera angles. So I started importing in a normal size humanoid model, and right now you're seeing my attempts on trying to put muscle mass onto it. Now I have no anatomy background, and so you're literally seeing me starting over and over just trying to get like the right size. So I'm putting a lot of time into shaping the pecs, the shoulders, and the neck and the upper back, just because when you're seeing like a really towering and buffed up individual, that's one of like the first things you see. Okay, so I did a jump cut right here, and it was probably like my 10th try, and I finally got to a place where I'm pretty satisfied with the size. I was watching like a ton of anatomy and sculpting tutorials, and I finally got to a place where it looks pretty good, and so I added a multi-resolution modify on it so that I can like sculpt the fine details on the muscles. And so yeah, this looks pretty good. So now we're moving on to my third part, and that is the lighting. So right now I'm creating a small light behind his body just so that I can create this really nice thin layer of rim lighting along his shoulders. This will help contour, the back muscles I created and make him look a little bit more ripped. Okay, so right now I'm trying to replicate that dramatic lighting that I mentioned before, and I'm adding like a really strong spotlight towards the bottom aiming up, and I realized I think I made his pecs a bit too big, and so when I was shooting the light up, his pecs actually blocked the light towards his face. So I started adjusting the light, but also added a very tiny fill light so that I can fill in the underexposed parts of his face. Okay, so this is the final render image that we got from Blender. I skipped it inside the video, but I basically added a tiny eye texture to give it life to the model. So now we're on the last part, which is compositing everything in Photoshop, and that includes the background inserts, Super Saiyan auras, rocks, and embers, and things like that. So yeah, let's just break it down. So I started with this really nice cloud photo. I'm a huge fan for these dramatic looking clouds, and I love the way there's like an empty space where it allows the light to bleed through. Gives the audience eye a sense of direction for the whole composition, because I think the picture was originally horizontal and I flipped it vertical, so it allows the bright contrast area to be in the middle, and that is where Goku will be. Alright, so now I'm adding a subtle bluish tint to the background because I wanted the overall image or composition to have a blue or yellowy scheme to it, and so I'm changing the background to that color. So I also imported the PNG image of Goku, and I made a color map so that I can match it with the background. And now I'm making these small adjustments to the shoulders and adding a very slight ambient glow all over his body. I felt like it wasn't enough, so I did some light wrapping work, and this will help enhance the highlights on his body, but this also creates a bridge that will help the other assets blend in together. For the hair, I wanted to make it glow like in the anime, but I was trying to avoid making the hair look like Rapunzel from the Disney movie Tangled, where her hair is all glowy and all pretty and wavy. So I came up with the idea of trying to make his hair look more like glowing crystals, I guess, in a way, or glowing amber rock or something like that. And so I looked at a bunch of like people with spiky hair in the early 2000s, and they had these really nice jagged edges to them. So I felt like that was like the perfect design on how Goku's hair could look like in real life. Alright, so I mentioned all the most important parts of the breakdown, so now I will start speeding up the breakdown layer process, just because the whole Photoshop editing part was around 7 to 8 hours, and so yeah, I'll see you guys in a bit. Okay, so it's basically almost done, and now I'm just adding those small details like the electricity, the smaller smoke assets, and then I brought it into After Effects to animate bits and pieces of it and doing like the final touches. So yeah. Alright, so before I review the final image, I thought it would be really cool to do a comparison between the beginning image and to the after image. And so let's go back to the original image that we got from Blender. And after doing all the animation stuff in After Effects and doing the Photoshop manipulation stuff, adding the smoke, embers, rocks, and putting all that design stuff that we talked about before, the final result is... Like I said, this was a really fun project to work on. There's definitely more projects ahead that I'm very excited to share. Please feel free to comment down below if you guys have any suggestions for future projects, or if you have any questions regarding the overall process that we went over today. Please feel free to subscribe as well. Thank you so much for taking this small journey with me. I'll see you guys next time.